This is Chit and Chat, the encouraging one other podcast. What it's all about, encouraging others. Welcome to the Chit and Chat, encouraging one other podcast. As I began this podcast, my goal has always been to reach out to people from all walks of life and pick their brain, if you will. Things like who encouraged them, who inspired them. In a recent interview I had a few weeks ago with country singer Jessica Lynn Whitty, she mentioned her husband was a musician. So why not? I got his name, began to listen to some of his music, and I pulled him up on YouTube and watched some of his videos. This one you're listening to now, it's called Allegory of a Mockingbird, and I believe it's really, really peaceful and really, really calming. One I'll play later in the podcast is called Rain, from his album Accidental Grace, and it's such a great story, and I could listen to that for hours as well. He has produced 8 solo albums and continues to constantly collaborate on new music with artists from all around the world. He mentors young artists to help them strive for their dreams and be bold. I'm so glad our paths have crossed. And ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor today to have on another great musician from the Pacific Northwest, Mr. Raymond Hayden. I'm excited to talk to him about his music and talk to him about who really encouraged him and inspired him. This is Chit and Chat, where it's all about encouraging one another. This is Rain from Accidental Grace by Raymond Hayden. Sweet. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Raymond Hayden. I'm excited to talk to you today and And so I'm glad our paths crossed accidentally through your wife. And so I'm excited today.
Me too, man. Hey, I appreciate you having me. This is fantastic. Any chance to talk to someone who loves music and supports it like you're doing, my honor, brother. My honor.
Before we dive into some great conversations, I like to pick people's brains, some interesting icebreakers. I hope you get your brain ready, and we're gonna go through 4, 5, 6 questions and just kind of get your brain going a little bit.
Bring it on.
As I can see in you and your wife, a 2 week vacation anywhere in the world. Where are you going and why?
We are going to go to Egypt and see the pyramids, and the Sphinx and all that stuff. We watch a lot of those Discovery channels and whatever, and we're both absolutely just um, mystified by all that, and we just want to go see it just to kind of see it for ourselves.
Nice, yeah, yeah. If you were not a musician, what other profession would you be in and why?
That actually ties back to the first one. When I was in college, I was taking. I don't have a bachelor's. My bachelor's is my 4 years I served in the army, but
Okay.
my associate's degree, I basically it was a music. Associate. Obviously, associates of arts and sciences, but it was very heavy on music, but right behind that was anthropology. I'd be in one of the fields, in anthropology for sure, because yeah, I just love. It's kind of like what I love about the music industry. It's not just the music, but it's the connection with the fans and friends and venue owners and podcast owners and bandmates, whatever. It's all that connection and finding out about them. It's the same thing with history, right? Getting a
Right.
chance to whatever. So yeah, so that's I would it ties back to the first one, Egypt. I'd I would absolutely be Andy. I'd be Indiana Jones.
Nice. Are you afraid of snakes or spiders, or you just go for it?
I hate them, but I'm not. I'm not afraid of. I'm more afraid of spiders than I am of snakes.
Okay. I grew up in Arkansas, so a snake is a snake. I don't care if they say it doesn't bite. I don't come to Jesus and I see a snake. So
Oh boy. Well, you got pet snakes, right? This is my pet snake, Bubba.
yeah, no, my brother-in-law had it one time. I'm like, keep that thing away from me.
Oh boy, yeah. I hear you.
What's something on your bucket list? Maybe to sing somewhere you never have, or perform somewhere, or maybe collaborate with someone you never have before. Who would that be? And
Ooh, that's a great question. There's a handful of people. I got to think about that for a second because there's so many talented people out there. I can't give you one. Well, actually, I can give you one. I would say David Gilmour of Pink Floyd.
you get 2 or 3 is fine. I don't mind. It's your time.
Yeah, David Gilmour, Pink Floyd would definitely be one. Um, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind writing with Joseph Williams. Joseph Williams is John Williams, the composer's son, but he's also really well known for singing with Toto.
Okay.
And then probably right after that, this may sound funny, but this is something that I've realized recently. I would love to sit in a room with Dolly Parton.
Mm. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of videos lately of Kenny Rogers and her, and just those two are just icons. Period.
Yeah. Well, just so much I've heard about her because, as you know, or maybe you don't know, I have two podcasts, and one of them is called Rubbing Elbows, and the lead, the host, I'm the co-host in that one. My other podcast, Houston, I am the host on this one, but on Rubbing Elbows, I'm the co-host. But the host is a guy named Don Ellis Gatlin, and his band Savannah Jack toured with the Kenny Rogers band for over a decade. And when Kenny Rogers passed away, Don was asked to take his place in the
Mm.
band, if you will.
Oh wow.
And and so they've I've heard. I mean, people we've interviewed. We just interviewed Rhonda Vincent, and she was talking about a song she did on I think the album was called Restoration or something like this of Elton John in '95, where she did a song that Elton John and Bernie Taupin put out called Please, and her and Dolly Parton did a duet of it. And just everyone I've heard that's ever met her or whatever has just said what a joy and what a real person she is, and I'm not a country artist, but I've always thought, man, I would just love to sit down on my piano with that lady and see what happened.
I know she did a good song with for King and Country recently, a Christian group that my daughter just loves, and so I think she is very gifted across the. And so it's amazing listening to her music still today.
Yeah, and she's a very smart businesswoman.
Name 3 musicians, past or present, that you've never seen in concert that you want to see in concert.
I've never seen Muse, and I'm a big fan of Muse now. Matter of fact, my band Grieve the Astronaut, we style our music after Pink Floyd and Muse, and they're a current group, that's hot. I would love to see Muse. I would love to see. Um, I would love to see My Chemical Romance doing their concept show, The Black Parade. And then if I went into the past, I've seen Pink Floyd, but I can tell you, I would have loved to have seen Pink Floyd with when David Gilmour and Roger Waters were together, because what I saw was just Roger Waters, and it was fantastic. But I would have loved to have seen that.
Is there a venue on your bucket list that you would love to perform at?
Yeah, I would love to perform at Red Rocks. I've always thought about that. Every video. I mean, there's a bunch of places, right? But whatever, that place just looks magical.
Yeah, I've seen a video with John Tesh played there, and it was just amazing to watch. A long time ago.
Oh yeah, Red Rocks or the Gorge at George in Washington.
Okay. For my listeners out there who might not know who you are.
Yeah, sure. My name is Raymond Hayden, and I am an artist. My main instrument is piano, and I do sing as well, but my main instrument is piano. I've been a musician since I was 9 years old. Started playing drums, was on tour buses at 9, all around the West Coast and Western Canada, in drum and bugle corps. And then throughout high school, junior high and high school, I played trumpet, French horn, baritone, trombone, mellophone, all the brass instruments. The Marines tried to recruit me to go into the Marine Corps band, and I didn't want to do that, but I ended up joining the Army. And when I got over into Germany in 1986, long story, but basically I got introduced to another musician. He said we should jam, and we went down to the music center, which there was a huge music center right out the gates of our barracks. And went over there, and he was on his guitar. His name was James Rocket Rose, and playing guitar, and I was playing trumpet. Didn't really work out, and we were leaving, and as I left, I saw a Polaroid on a board, and it was someone selling a Roland Juno 106 synthesizer. And I looked at him and I said, "Hell, James, I got 3.5 years left in the Army. I should go get a loan, buy that keyboard. I'll learn how to play keyboards. We'll start a rock band." That night we went out, got beers. Next day I woke up and said, "Screw it." Went and did that. Went into the bank, got a loan, bought the keyboard, started getting lessons from my mentor, Michael Hine, who's still my dear friend today. See him at least once a year. And that's when the journey began. And first band was Ambition, and then touring all throughout Europe and then the East Coast. That band broke up, came here to the Northwest, and played in a bunch of different bands. And 8-9 albums later, and a ton of singles, and performing with a lot of different bands around the area. Here I am now. And, in between, I had a record label for 10 years, and I've had 2 podcasts, and I've mentor young musicians. And during COVID, I was a sounding board for a lot of very, very depressed musicians. And I just love everything about the music industry. And although I don't do it full time, my wife does, but I don't. I have a career in sales. Everything I do, I go to bed thinking about music, wake up thinking about music, and just know that it's an opportunity that God gave me to connect with people and heal people, and hopefully distract them from all the challenges. That's a hell of a long, but that's not a short bio. That's just kind of the snapshot of who I am.
It's what we'll discuss in this podcast as well. Do you remember the first person who really encouraged you to pursue music? Maybe a teacher or someone you came across that music was kind of your gift?
Well, I would say how I started playing brass instruments was one day in sixth grade. A guy showed up with a bunch of instruments, and we all got to go through. And I mean, that would never happen now, right, with the whole COVID thing. But we all went through, and I just happened to resonate with the horn, but I wanted to be a drummer, so that's where I got started. But that leads to where the encouragement came, because my mom has always been one of my biggest supporters. I know people say that, but she showed up to lots of shows and always inquires and always buys stuff, even though she doesn't have to. Um, but then probably one of the biggest encouragers I had was my band director when I was in high school. He always encouraged me and pushed me and just told me how good I was and how much better I could be, by practicing and this and that, whatever. So I'd say probably the two biggest supporters in my life have been my mom and then my band director, Tom Hope, when I was going to high school.
Were there musicians who you admired growing up that you like? I want to do that, or I love that particular set or that group or whatever.
Yeah, when I was a trumpet player and had all the brass instruments, it was Maynard Ferguson. First time I ever heard a song called Chameleon, I was hooked, and I was like, I want to do that. Then when I became a keyboard player for years, and I still love them, seen them many times, I still love them. But the band I wanted to be like was Chicago. And matter of fact, I had a band in the early '90s that was called Nevis, and we had a horn section, and we actually did a couple. We did "Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is" and "Make Me Smile," covers by Chicago. Then the rest were originals, but all the originals I was writing at the time were geared towards having a horn band.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know your first concert you ever attended? When and where?
First concert was Chicago. It was Chicago 17.
Oh yeah.
With Stay the Night and We Can Stop the Hurtin' and Hard Habit to Break and Along Comes a Woman and Hard to Say actually no, Hard to Say I'm Sorry was 16, but anyway, 17. And Peter, it was the last album Peter Cetera was on.
Mm-hmm. What did you enjoy most about being a musician? Hitting the road, singing at venues, collaborating with musicians, kind of all of that, or just kind of bits and pieces of that?
Bits and pieces of it, but the thing I enjoy doing the most is creating and collaborating. Some musicians don't. I hate to say this, but like, there's no other way to say it. They just don't get it. Some of the biggest musicians in the world have built their careers and become who they are because they collaborated with other musicians and brought other ideas into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the creative process and the collaborative process are absolutely my number one on the list. Love playing live, love all the traveling and all that, but those are the two that are the main.
How do you think social media has changed the music industry over the past few years? Probably 10, 15 years. Even I have a thing in my room now, the Alexa app. If I say that and say your name, play music, she's playing your music. How cool is that?
No, it's really good. And I want to be very careful how I answer this question because I'm being sincere with both sides of it. So on one hand, what a wonderful platform to put out, your content, like, photos and stuff like this, and then your art. I don't put art or music as content. I put music as art.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to put out your art, to be able to reach people all over the globe. That was possible before, but the only way that was going to happen is if you, you know, traveled there or whatever, or had a major record label pushing you and taking you in those places and,
Yep.
paying the money to having a bigger market. So overall, I mean, what a wonderful thing that these new platforms exist, that you can touch people with the UK and Zimbabwe and Australia and God knows. Now, the flip side to that is, and that's a beautiful thing. That's why we do art, is to connect with people. The downside to that is it's basically taken away the value of the artist.
Mm-hmm.
The Spotify, which everybody uses, and I release my music and it goes on Spotify. You don't really have a choice. I mean, that's one of the outlets they distribute it to. But while all the big CEOs and all those people are making all the money, and everybody for $9.99 a month gets unlimited music and this and that. What the artists actually get is nothing. It's
Wow.
nothing. So all that music is out there, and I'm not saying that from a jaded point. I'm just saying it realistically. People may not know this, but they go, "Oh, well, everyone pays $9.99. It goes into a pool." No, it's like 0.00001. And for an artist, most of the artists I know that make money on there are the big artists. And if you see an independent artist, and there's exceptions to every rule, but if you see an independent artist that has millions of views, um, it's I'm not saying it's not real, but there's companies out there like a company like Playlist Booker or other companies out there where you can pay them to help get you on playlists.
Right.
So let's say you pay $80 or whatever, and you get 100 new followers. Well, by the time you spend the money that is required to get up to the payable rate, up around $1 million, you will have spent more money than you're going to make.
Yep.
And when the month is over, it turns back around again. You have to continue to keep into it. Now, some people could say, well, that's not a bad deal. Every business has to do that. Well, true, with the exception of if that was making money, fantastic. It's not. It's not. I mean, the money that's made, like you put in $500 to get to $1 million, and $1 million, follow or viewers or listeners or spins or whatever, and you get paid 400, you're upside down, and it's a revolving thing. So the music industry is just a little bit different. And there's a lot of other platforms out there that do that. So the good side is you get to connect with people. The downside is the value of music has gone down drastically. And for a musician, an artist, to make a living, it literally requires either A, gigging your ass off. So which you're wearing out, and you can lose your joy just by going crazy.
Yep.
Or doing a combination of playing live, writing, co-writing, trying to get licensing through film and TV and other mediums, ads and whatever, or getting or like my wife does, Jessica Lynn Whitty, co-writing and writing songs in Nashville, getting a publisher, and then having Song Plugger and a publisher pitch it to bigger artists. So, like for example, let's say maybe a Miranda Lambert or a Carrie Underwood or a Gretchen Wilson, whatever, Dolly Parton, Rhonda Vincent, whoever, but loves the song, buys it, and then the artist makes a lot of money. So, yeah, it's tricky.
There was no YouTube back in the day. There's no Facebook, no Instagram. It was all word of mouth, or radio, or some spots here and there on TV, possibly. But yeah, I think it's made it difficult for some and better for others, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is in case anyone's listening and even for a second thinks that I'm complaining, that's not the case. It's just the reality. I'm just spewing the reality. So if you want to overcome all that, then you have to let all that go and find a way. And there's always a way to do it. It just, but the most important thing, and I know you didn't ask this, but the most important thing for any person, forget just being a musician, is if you understand yourself, you understand what drives you. There's a TED Talk out there. It's TED Talk, The Why. And if you haven't watched that, you have 18 minutes, go watch it. But really understand who you are, then, don't fool yourself. Actually go after that. But if that's who you really are, you're going to have the passion, the drive, and the patience and the tenacity to get through all the frustrations of how things have changed, because things are always changing. And then if it's not your thing, then maybe you do it as a hobby. I mean, being a musician doesn't mean you play 6 times a week. It just, it means that you create, you're creating something for the ears, lyrics, a narrative for people to listen to and maybe resonate with. So you got 10 fans or 10 million fans. You're still touching someone.
My podcast has been around about 5 months, and I just got the idea years ago. I went to a coffee shop called Chit and Chat. Just a place to come, meet a buddy, and have coffee and just chit and chat about life. And
oh, nice.
And so it costs money to do that. And I had an idea, let's bring it to a podcast. And Joe, and I get all the time now, I don't have a lot of viewers, but I love talking to people. I love getting their story, but now I get a lot of crap stuff. Hey, $100 you can get you 5,000 listeners. I don't care. I don't. If someone was listening to this podcast, I'm happy. I'm not going to buy people to come on board. I like doing what I do. But why? I agree with you. It's when you buy X amount of money to get more listeners or whatever. I think it's kind of hard on anybody else, I think.
Well, and it's not, and for the most part, I mean, it's really not sustainable. Because if you're paying money to get on playlists, the only way that's going to keep going, I mean, and people could say, well, you're not good enough. Well, these playlists have, hundreds of songs on them. And, it can be a serious money pit. And there's a lot of internet radio stations these days. And some of them don't charge anything. And some of them do. I mean, I've been reached out to about my new single, Put Aside Your Worry, by a bunch of different stations, and they're like, yeah, we want to spin your song, and we see it's coming out, whatever. And then I get a thing that says, well, you'll get 4 plays a day for a month for $40, and 6 plays a day. And I'm like, I always tell them, hey, thank you so much. I'm not going to pay to have my music played, because there are plenty of internet radio stations too. For example, Music Mafia Radio and Seattle Wave Radio, they do not pay. They run these stations in their beautiful landscapes, and they do it all out because they love, just like the musician, they love the music and they put it out there, and they're very, very picky at who they put on there. So you've got to be good, but that's life. You got to be so good that you can't be ignored. And if you are, somebody will notice it. And you don't need to be on 100 radio stations to be noticed. You just have to be on the ones that people actually listen to. But it's absurd to me to pay a publicist to go out and do some ads and get you connected with radio stations. Absolutely. But to actually pay a station, at the end of the day, if they're playing your music, they should be grateful, or they should be paying you. And you should be getting your money through advertising. That's how it works. But
I'm excited. I've reached out to some of the musicians. You mentioned the Music Mafia group. That's some guys on there that actually will be on my show in the coming weeks. I'm excited about sharing their music as well. And
nice.
Yeah, so I saw that on the Jessica's site, so I've been kind of following some guys on that and listening to their music. Have you ever participated in a music competition like The Voice or something like that before?
I have not The Voice, but I did years ago when I had the record label. I kept hearing stories about The Voice and American Idol. We have friends who have been on all those shows, and Jessica's auditioned for The Voice like 3 times, I think, and they always end up telling her they call her, the producers call her, and then they end up saying, well, we've already got our country voice. So I was like, I wanted to try one of these just to see what it's really like.
Okay.
And so I auditioned for America's Got Talent when they were in Seattle. I'm going to say, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that.
I like this.
Yeah. And it was fun. They were really nice to me. It wasn't like what you see in American Idol. I mean, because there's lots of steps you go before you ever get on TV. Tons of steps. And I played Mad World by Tears for Fears and did a piano vocal version of that. And I thought I did great, but never got a call, never got called back. It wasn't a good or bad experience. It was just interesting. There was a ton of people sitting in that lobby warming up and doing all kinds of different stuff. And so that was my one time doing that.
I spoke with the musician a few months ago, and they believe that these competition shows are actually hurting an industry. Do you agree or disagree?
I lost you there for a second. What was that say?
Spoke to a musician a few months ago who said they believe these competition shows are hurting the industry. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I absolutely agree that they're hard. I don't know if they're, well, yeah, I guess they are hard on the industry, but they're more hard on realistic expectations. Because they, so many of these shows, the one thing that a lot of people don't know about, and I guess people probably don't care about, but these artists, I mean, how many of these artists do you really see make it the big time? Not many of them.
Yeah.
Not many. I mean, Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood both won, and they did capitalize on that. Chris Daughtry did not win, but he's still out playing and live and putting out music or whatever. But I think it creates an unrealistic expectation of what a good or great singer really is. And this is just my opinion, because and this goes for any instrument, okay? Keyboards, guitar, mandolin, harpsichord, violin, whatever, but specifically towards the voices, it's just for this question. There's a real false sense of what is good and what makes a great singer. Just because someone can get up there and do all kinds of scales and sing real high or real low and do the really cool vibratos and all that stuff is the same thing as a piano player that playing classical music and Mozart and doing whatever. Is that great? Absolutely. Is a vocalist who can do all kinds of scales and has a high range great? Absolutely. But something I kind of gave myself many years ago was an expression, which is from Kurt Cobain to Queen and everything in between. Okay. So how this relates to your question is if Freddie Mercury got on one of these shows, most likely he would go through, they would love him. If Kurt Cobain did, or let's say maybe not Joe Cocker, but Roy Orbison or Tom Petty or Steven Tyler, I mean, that have these very, very unique voices, but aren't standard to what they're defining as a great voice. Would they go through? Who the hell knows? Would Mike Love of the Beach Boys through with that high falsetto of his? Who the hell knows? Doubtfully, because what really makes a good singer, a great singer, is someone who, no matter what style, no matter what they do, no matter what their technical capabilities are, whatever it is, do they sing in pitch? Most of the time, absolutely. That's important. Do they have power? Do they know how to use their voice? Yes. Just like any instrument, you need to do the time. But does your voice resonate? Does it touch people? And I've heard lots of singers over the years who aren't the greatest singers in the world touch people and move people. And so those shows, I think they really hurt ultimately, yes, they hurt the industry because they create a false sense of what really is good and what's not. Because so much stuff out there, Jody, is so cookie cutter. And in the studio, there's a lot of these artists that are coming out that they use a process, a plug-in, an effect called Melodyne. I do the same thing because the recording is forever. You go in and they tweak the heck out of their vocals, and then you go see this artist live, and you wonder why they don't sound anything like the record. And so, but their expectations are what they hear on The Voice and American Idol, because it's so much so that, like, when someone asks if you want a drink, right? A lot of times somebody say, "Hey, would you like a Coke or something?" Coke has become a staple to a beverage, right? And when people, because Jessica's been asked this before, and they mean well, but people, when their form of, the fans, sometimes their form of a compliment is coming up to an artist and saying, "Oh my God, you should apply audition for America's Got Talent or The Voice or American Idol." And so that right there shows that the industry is saying what is good and what is great is what those shows put out. Not that there's not some great singers. There are. I mean, oh my God, there's some fantastic things that people that have come out of that. But it's a little tricky. It kind of dilutes what is really talent.
How important is music to you?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. It's at one point in my life, I would say it's who I am. I won't say that anymore. But it's a form of communication. I wake up in the morning. Since I was 9 years old when I played drums for the first time to this moment, when I go to bed, I think about music. When I wake up, I think about music. During the day, when I'm doing my job, in between, like if I'm driving somewhere, in between calls or I'm at lunch, I'm listening to music or thinking about it or whatever. I used to think that what I was what I am, what I do is a musician. No, what I am is I'm a man. I'm another human being that wants to connect with other human beings. And I just happen to have the gift and also the hard work that I put into it and still do to this day, an ability to communicate through a different method that touches people in a much more intimate way.
Mhm.
And so I'm very grateful for that. I'm humbled. Um, I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and I constantly capitalize on my strengths and work on my weaknesses to make them, marry somewhere up in the middle. But it's saved my life many times, and it's been my therapy.
I think I'm getting older because I'm beginning to really love instrumental music. I could listen, put it on, and just kind of, and at work and behind the scenes a little bit. It's just kind of mellows me out. It's just kind of relaxing. I got 3 year songs I wrote down. I'm just going to discuss a little bit. Alec is, I hope I say it right, Mockingbird. Yeah, the first one I came across, and I pictured a waterfall as I'm listening to it. It's so peaceful and relaxing. Can you share a little bit about that?
Um, the last part of what you said got cut out. Would you?
Oh, Allegory of a Mockingbird. Can you share a little bit about that writing that song? What's it about?
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's probably my connection. My internet sometimes is weird, but yeah, Allegory of Mockingbird is one of um, uh, a handful of songs that I put together. I released one at a time for an EP called Ghosts of the Delirium. And um, uh, the best, how can I explain this? So when the before I wrote the new music for the new Grieve the Astronaut album, I was working on this EP, and what it was is when the pandemic was going on, I was feeling sad and tense and frustrated and confused, and not necessarily for myself, but because I care so much about my artist brothers and sisters in the world. My heart was really bleeding for them. And so I started writing these songs, but just sitting down and just writing a song based on how I was feeling. And the reason I call the EP Ghosts of the Delirium are because it sounded better than Memories of the Chaos.
Mm.
And so for me, when I wrote that song, Ghosts of the Delirium, I was like, okay, listen, I don't want to get crazy here, but I want to come up with something that sounds a little bit more artistic, that sounds a little bit more beautiful. And ghosts is like memories, they are memories, right? Um, uh, uh, Delirium is chaos, and so that's where that name came from, was Ghost of the Delirium. And Allegory of a Mockingbird, and this is just something that maybe people, if they really do get interested in what I'm saying here, is maybe go on in Google and look it up. The Mockingbird. There was a lot of information, misinformation, whatever you want to know, that was coming our way, all the world's way, and none of us knew really how to decipher it, to know what was going on. And there's a lot around a mockingbird that has to do with kind of the unknown and things like that. And so instead of saying songs about the unknown or whatever, I was like, Allegory of a Mockingbird. It's just, it's a song about things or can't really grasp or whatever. And I really just thought that, a lot of times, and a name is a name, but I just thought that Allegory of a Mockingbird kind of told a different story, because it is kind of a silly narrative on, we never really know what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Story behind Rain.
Well, Rain, when I wrote that, I was sitting down, and I just put my hands on the piano, and first chord I hit was an A minor, which is probably one of my favorite keys to write in. And I love writing in minor keys. And I was just I started playing something, and I kind of got teary eyed, and I stopped, and I was like, what am I thinking about? And I really wasn't thinking about anything. But then I kind of realized that I'd gone through coaching over COVID, and it really taught me to value myself for the first time in my existence. And I realized that a lot of my coach helped me realize over the course of a year that a lot of the reasons I didn't value myself was because, when I started doing music, I stopped doing baseball, and my stepdad kind of, I don't want to say he disowned me, but he didn't really support me what I did, didn't really care, and it changed our relationship. And then my biological father wasn't there at all. He left when my parents divorced at 1.5. When I finally met him, um, he was a lovely man, very charismatic, and before he passed away, I ended up, if you will, forgiving him for not being around and not really having a good answer for why. But he really seemed, towards the end, he seemed more interested in sharing what he was all about as a painter and a musician himself, and what was my mom up to versus what I was up to. So it was a very sad thing that really led to me not valuing myself. And when I wrote that song, and you've seen the video for it. There's a video for it on YouTube, Rain. Um, it was my what if song. What if one of my fathers had realized at a young age um, that I had a passion for this thing called music.
Mhm.
What would that look like? And so I try to paint that picture with music, and you know um like the melody was da 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 da, kind of like a thoughtful thing. And then
Mhm.
right after that, what bridges that is this, a kind of a classical sounding thing, da 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 da, is kind of a hmm that's the musical version to me of us going, let me contemplate that. So simply put, that song uh healed that pain in my life. And from that point going forward, I was able to really start working on that. And now I absolutely value myself. And yeah, so that song, that the simple little, short little piano instrumental song, there's a lot behind it. People just hear a song and they never really know. So thanks for asking that question.
And last one is A Beautiful Place. A little story behind.
So, A Beautiful Place is a song that it was the last song that Grieve the Astronaut put out. And really simple 3 chord song. So, the first guitar player that we had in the band, there's a song that I'd written called Painter's Moon. And he was like, you know, I don't know if we want to do that. Maybe we can do a different version of that. We kind of talked about that and stuff, and I said, sure. I'll tell you what. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's take the same 3 chords. You know, B flat, G minor, and D minor. That's it. They're the entire song. It never changes.
Hmm.
It's one of the only songs I've ever written that is that simple.
Well,
And he goes, yeah, let's just try it and see what this version of Grieve the Astronaut comes up with. And then he looks at me and he goes, and if you're looking for lyrics, he says, just look at that board. I mean, there was a poster, it still is. There's a poster on my wall behind the keyboards. He says, yeah, just sing the lyric, just sing some of the words on that poster board. So you can, so you don't have to try to search for lyrics, and you can kind of come up with a melody and etc. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? That sounds like a good idea. So the very first line on that I read off the board was, "You make life look beautiful."
mm.
And so I was like, you make life look beautiful, and so I was like, that's cool. And then I read some of the other words off this board, and which none of them, because we recorded while we were practicing, none really made it, but that one line was like, that is like really cool. So that's what started the process of writing, the song. The band ended up coming up with their own kind of version, which is kind of U2 slash Duran Duran ish. Um, and I wrote the lyrics starting with that one line. And like a lot of times when I write lyrics, I don't always know what I'm writing about. Sometimes years later, I'll go, oh, okay, now I know what I was writing about. So when I wrote that song, I didn't really realize who I was writing about. I mean, what or who I was writing about until it
Mhm.
was done. And then I realized I was writing it about my wife. But it's something that everybody can relate to in different ways, for different things. It doesn't just have to be a person.
What's it like filming a video? I mean, you're basically creating a mini in 3 to 5 or 6 minutes. Do you remember the first video you created?
I do. It's a song called Mystic Rhythm, and it was off of my second album, September Sky. And it I had a roommate at the time that was in the film. Well, he still is in the film industry. He's worked on some big films, but it was when he was getting started. His name was Arthur Reynolds, and I said, "Hey, man," he goes, "He'd always talked about wanting to shoot a music video for me," and I said, "Well, I'd like to pay you to do one for me." And he said, "Great, which song?" I said, "I'll let you pick." So I gave him a bunch of the songs, and he picked a song called Mystic Rhythm. This is an example of what I was talking about earlier about not knowing sometimes what you're writing about. And I didn't know for years. Didn't really realize for years. I mean, I thought I knew, but didn't really realize for years what I truly was writing about. Um, so the song was written by myself and Dave, a guy named Dave Sawyer, and we were jamming in his garage, and we came up with the song together. And then I wrote lyrics to it. And so Art chose that song. And the way I work when I collaborate is like, okay, hey, listen, this is what you do. This is what I do. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You do it, and then we'll talk about it. So he goes, okay. So he wrote the entire idea for the music video. And then when he told me, then he sat down and told me what it was. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds beautiful, but I didn't say this, but I didn't really know what it had to do with the song, you know, Mystic Rhythm. And so he told me about it, and then he said, okay, it's going to cost, this is what it's going to cost. It was like $2,500 or something like this. And he said, we're going to have this person, be on this person that be on it. So we ended up having a full crew, shot it up at a sound studio in Seattle. And the first 2 days of shooting, I wasn't there. They said I didn't need to be there. And the video ends up being this me on a grand piano and a gal, I think her name was Sabrina, wearing masks and juggling a glass ball. And not the type of juggling you see at a circus where they got 3 balls in there, but literally it was where they in their hands, they just kind of juggle this like a one ball. Just kind of, it's a really cool thing. And they got a bunch of Hollywood balls, which were basically made of sugar. They look like glass, but they're made of sugar. And then so she would be juggling it, and then she'd drop it, and then she'd reach down, and they'd film her, picking all this glass up, and then they'd cut out, and then they'd film her juggling again. So it looked like she picked this ball up, and then it formed as a ball again, and juggled it. And so from the beginning of the video to the end of the video, we had her face fitted for masks. So at the beginning of the video, she has a full mask on. And then throughout the video, the mask starts to erode away. Every time you see her, it's less of a mask, less of a mask, less of a mask. And so at the very end, the mask is just covering one eye, which is hilarious because she's a stunningly gorgeous woman, and you never really get to see her. But so the most of the video, if you go onto YouTube and type in Raymond Hayden Mystic Rhythm, you'll be able to see it. You'll see me on a piano, this beautiful gal in a black dress, very elegant black dress, juggling a glass ball. So when we're filming all this, you talk about what it was like. Well, it was a lot of fun. You have to. People don't realize how many times you shoot from different angles. You'll shoot in movies too. You shoot a movie, one scene from 4 different angles, so they catch every different angle. How much continuity is important and all this stuff. So it's monotonous. Shooting a music video is monotonous because you're doing scenes over and over and over again. And but it's fun too. You're hanging out with other people, making jokes, eating food on set, this, that, the other. But it was a cool experience for me because it was my first music video of mine. I'd been in other music videos for other people, but it was my first music video. I didn't really know what was going on. I was like, okay, I'm playing piano. I get that. She's got a mask on. Why is she, so she keeps taking the mask off, and then she's juggling a ball. So I thought for many years, this was just a really cool artistic vision, right? But if you listen to the song and you listen to the lyrics, the song is about dreams. Mystic Rhythm, is another, is another way of saying your dreams. everyone has the dreams and passion and whatever. And we, everyone keeps telling you to follow follow your dreams, mystic rhythms, in the here and the now, it just, so when I've watched it many times, but I was watching it a few years later, maybe even 3 years later. And I realized that the lyrics talk about following your dreams, and our own worst enemy are ourselves.
Mm.
We shut down our dreams ourselves, all that. We do things to sabotage and whatever. So when you see this girl, and she's dropping this glass ball and it's breaking, and then we do some really cool thing with special effects, which wasn't easy back then. Where we had superimposed the same actress on the right and left hand side trying to bat the ball out of her hand. So that was basically showing that it was her. So you're working against yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and the more that the song went on, that she was able to juggle the ball longer without it dropping and breaking, the more her mask came off.
Mm.
And so basically, the song is, the more you stop, you believe in yourself and stop working against yourself, the true you will come out. And isn't that a beautiful sentiment?
Yeah.
And I just thought it was an artistic video that he did with this gal with masks on. But if you really listen to the lyrics and the music and whatever, it really makes the song come alive. That was my first experience.
And what year was that?
I'm going to say maybe 2006, something like that. Or was it 2006? 2000, it was early 2000s.
Okay.
I just don't remember exactly when.
You mentioned earlier in the podcast, you do some podcasting. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your podcast and what's it about and where can people find your podcast?
Sure. Yeah. So, number one, you can find out anything I do. My podcasts, Grieve the Astronaut, solo projects, the band I play keyboards and sing backing vocals in, Strangely All Right. Everything can be, because I have a separate website for Grieve the Astronaut, etc. But RaymondHayden.net. If you just type in RaymondHayden.net, it's got everything I do there. So that's the one-stop shop, that you can find all the projects, the podcasts, etc. Houston. So my very first podcast I ever did was a podcast called Aquarium, and I did just under 200 of those many, many years ago, when podcasts were just kind of becoming a thing, and had independent rock stars. Had Gus Seifert from Beck and Nora Jones. I had Steve Lukather from Toto, and on and on and on. But then that just got too busy with life. I couldn't do that anymore. So I ended up creating a podcast called Houston. And the tagline is, Houston, we have a program. And it was actually named by my wife. She's the one that came up with that. But you can also find that on my website, Houston. And it's basically where I'm the host, I'm the creator. I book the guests. I write the entire show. And then I have Mark Gordon from Seattle Wave Radio. It used to be Dave Mark from Crash Bang Boom Studios, but it's now Mark Gordon of Seattle Wave Radio who produces it and then puts it on his platform of Seattle Wave Radio as well. And so I basically just get behind the scenes with local artists, independent artists, big artists, giving people an insight into what it's really like behind the scenes and get to know more about that artist. And then the new podcast I have is called Rubbin' Elbows. And also you can find that on my website as well. And both of those, Houston and Rubbin' Elbows, have Facebook pages as well. But that show, Jessica, a year plus ago, met a gentleman by the name of Don L. Scatlin, who I was talking earlier about in the show, took over for Kenny Rogers. They started collaborating together, and they do wonderful together. And him and I met and hit it off tremendously. And I had him on my podcast, Houston. And sometime after that, he's like, we should have a podcast. He said, I know so many big artists. And he said, I know they'd love to come and tell stories behind the scenes or whatever. And so we just started that. Our first, podcast is Rubbin' Elbows is going to go live August 5th. But we interviewed James House, who's a huge name in the music country world. Roy Firestone, who is a major Um,
Yeah.
you know who Roy Firestone is, but people out there listening, he's big as Howard Cosell.
Yeah.
He was in the movie Jerry Maguire. He's also a lot of people don't know this, but he's also an incredible singer. Then we had Rhonda Vincent, who's basically the queen of bluegrass. Our next guest is Bill. I can't pronounce his last name, but he was a producer of the Eagles, Bob Seger. The one after that is Jason Sheff, who played bass with Chicago for 15 some odd year, 20 years after Peter Cetera left. So that's newer, but it's A-list artists, and we get on there. I'm the co-host. I'm the Ed McMahon. I just do the funny little side notes. But Don is a great interview, and he's done stuff with all these artists and talks, and you get to hear really, really, really cool stuff about these major artists. And just like it just feels like you're doing it, and you're sitting in a room with them.
Right.
So, and it's fun. Again, it's back to what I said drives me is that music connection, whether I'm playing music, writing music, collaborating, or talking to other musicians, or talking to podcast hosts like yourself. It's awesome. Just
Your
awesome.
podcast, it sounds similar to mine. I love getting people's story, who encouraged them, who inspired them. I'm sure there have been some times in artists' life where they fell flat on their face, and it was two options: quit or keep going. And so I love picking people's brains and who would really encourage them. So it's kind of our podcast kind of piggyback off each other almost.
Yeah, absolutely. I know immediately when you told me, kind of what you were doing. I immediately was like, I really resonate with that because we're very, very similar, very like-minded, right? We're geniuses, Jody.
Yes. Can I? Is recording? My wife heard that, so that's awesome. Thank you. I love in your bio it says you consistently collaborate on new music with artists from all over the world, and you mentor young artists in helping them pursue their dream. Can you share a little bit about what that means to you and the people you've taught? I'm sure you've got some encouragement from musicians and artists who said, "Hey, Raymond helped get the motivation to get going in my music career."
Yeah. Well, my whole life, when I was growing up, as a teenager, I worked up at camps because I'm a Christian, and always work with younger kids and just guiding them, and love that, and that kind of carried on into my music career when I got some hours behind me and a little bit of experience to know what I was doing. And first real sincere thing with that was when I had my first podcast, The Aquarium, getting some younger artists on there and giving them ideas and encouraging them and supporting them. And then there's a local music store called Ted Brown Music, and I was on the board of directors for the Live It Out Loud, or for the Live It Out Loud program, their outreach program, which they have a bunch of things under that umbrella. And that is basically a rock and roll camp where you're a mentor. Every mentor gets a rock band, and they basically help guide them and teach them what it's like to be, what the things you need to know, what it's like being in a rock band. The rehearsals, the importance of practicing before you get to the rehearsals, and knowing the definitive nature behind the difference between practicing is what you do on your own, rehearsing is what you do as a band, creating stage plots, on and on, all the different things that are involved in the music industry. So they have a jump start on what they need, what they'll need to know in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some years were easy, some were very challenging, but ultimately always ended up beautiful and just as great of an experience for me as it was for them. And then, also I still continue. I don't, and this isn't, hey, look at me. I have a lot to learn. I garner a lot of information from other artists around me, and interviews I listen to, et cetera, and experiences. But I have a fair amount of veteran artists and older artists who are just now getting into the business, who come to me and never ask me to be their mentor, but we go out to lunch or do whatever, and then they tell me I'm their mentor, which is an amazing experience. It's very, very humbling, and it's beautiful, and it's nice to be able to touch someone else's life. And in any case, I'm always 100% honest. If something's great, I'll tell them. If something's not great, I'll tell them what I loved about it, and I'll tell them what give them some ideas that they could do to improve it.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. It's it's a big part of who I am and what makes me a better artist.
I came across the interview which said you have a nickname for yourself. It's a very mystic creature, the unicorn.
Yeah. I did not come up with that, by the way. Yeah. No, it's interesting how things stick. So years ago when I had the record label, one of the artists on the label was a guy named Russ Mazion. And he I can't remember, it's been too long. I don't know why he called me a unicorn, but he did. I think it was I think at the time it wasn't as much of a, like a compliment, like you're unique, or maybe it was just kind of he was, musicians give each other hell. So he might have just been giving me hell. I don't really know what was on his mind, but a couple times he posted stuff and said some stuff, and it just kind of caught on, and then everyone, and then it just blew up. Um, all of a sudden, everyone's like, "Ray, you're a unicorn." And then my wife and my her girlfriends and my other friends say, they always tell me I'm a unicorn. They say you are unique. There's not many people out there who are truly what they show they are to be. I've actually had people question, well, why would you help me? Why would you do this? And I'm like, no, this is who I am. And I think that's more of a sad reflection on how many people are afraid to be who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
Or who are try to fool, or who try to get over and manipulate and fool people.
Right. You're a unique person, and you go above beyond sharing your words of wisdom, your experiences. You teach, you motivate many musicians. On your website, I came across this: believe in yourself, challenge your beliefs, listen intently, face your fears, love yourself, laugh at yourself. Remember to give as well as take, and love one another. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Number one. Yeah. Sorry if I offend anybody on this next comment. So be it. Nice schmeish. We have, in this woke society that we live in, where we pander toward the minority. Now, let me define minority. I'm not talking about skin color, gender, sexual orientation. I'm not talking about that. I'm term minority truly as in a unit of measurement. Okay, and so you have 100 people in today's world, and 2 people complain, then their complaints will be heard and addressed over the other 98. That's maybe an exaggeration, but is it really? I mean, there's organizations out there trying to get rid of the word mother, this and that. I mean, people are too serious, and I'm not even saying it's their own fault sometimes. I may not even realize it. A lot of people, there's a lot of insight that's being lacked these days because of life. Life can be tough. But so when I said all that stuff, it's like, I want to focus on the laugh more and be able to laugh at yourself. We're funny people by nature. Some of the things that we do and say are funny. And I think one of the most attractive things about another human being is for something that either sounds irrational, maybe something they said that was hurtful, whether they meant it or didn't mean it, or whatever, is to be accountable and say, hey, I'm really sorry I said that. I was in a bad place. That's no excuse, but it just kind of goes into that, what everything used for my bio thing is like, hey, it may sound simple. I really think it is. It takes a little bit of time to really think about it. We have to take pause with ourselves to just sit back and realize this. But if we love ourselves first, then we are going to be better parents. We're going to be better friends. We're going to be better whatever. But if we love ourselves enough to not let somebody else, abuse us or manipulate us, whatever, then and hold them accountable. And the more of those kind of communications that happen, the better this world's going to be. So when I put that stuff out there, it's just like, hey, let's love each other. Let's, if somebody reacts in a certain way and it seems irrational or it seems kind of hyperbolic to the situation, maybe there's something going on in their life that you don't know about. Doesn't make it right or wrong, but give them a little bit of grace, And so, if I can put some advice or the way I look about things on a website and a few people see that, those few people take it into their heart, it's the right timing, and they push, live that to somebody, push that onto somebody else, et cetera, et cetera. Then you see how the dominoes flow.
As we begin to wrap up, I just want to say how thankful I am for our paths have crossed. And just
Same.
meeting your wife, and she mentioned your name. I'm like, why not reach out and just see? And I see our time is almost an hour, and valuable your time. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any words of wisdom for someone, words of encouragement who could be pondering their toes in the musical waters or artistry waters and kind of doubting themselves or their abilities? And maybe they're afraid of rejection. Any words of wisdom for somebody out there?
Ooh, words of wisdom. That's a big responsibility when someone asks you that, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And thank you, by the way, Jody. Before I forget, thank you for having me. Your time is just as valuable as mine, so thank you for taking the time and interest in letting me answer your questions. They're great questions. Words of wisdom. God, I don't want to be a book. I will just say, nobody who's ever been successful has not had, I mean, anyone who has had any amount of success has had help. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. I mean, and I promise I won't be a book, but in this society, if you have leukemia or cancer or diabetes or heart problems, people will put out GoFundMe campaigns for you, and they'll open their hearts, and they'll open, their minds and ears to you. If you have a mental issues, any type of mental issues, then it's almost like, you're a burden, you're cast out. No one wants to talk about that. It's all hush hush. We all, every person on this planet, could benefit from counseling, and that goes back to what I said about anyone who has had any amount of success has had help. If you're struggling with something, ask some in the music world or in the construction or engineer world, reach out to somebody in that world that knows what they're talking about. Ask for some advice. If you're dealing with something and you're dealing with something, maybe get some therapy. It's normal. I think everybody should do it. And then, I mean, there's so many things I want to say, but I will steal something that Jim Carrey said. And I don't know if I'm going to quote him exactly right, but when I heard it, I thought, what a beautiful thing. And he was talking about how his dad worked his whole life,
Yep.
and ended up, getting let go from his job, and and like I said, I may missing a part of this, so let's just stick with the idea around this. But he had talked about how something had happened where his dad had got let go from his job, and this happened, and Jim Carrey was like, what's the worst thing that you can do, if you go after something, a dream or a passion or whatever? The worst thing you can do is fail at something. So why not fail at something that you love doing?
Yep.
So
totally agree.
Yeah.
One last question for you. What does Hayden want to be remembered for?
Making a difference in people's lives. No matter what that is. It's that simple. I could tell you remember I talked in the very beginning of the interview about that TED Talk, The Why?
Yes, sir.
And I would encourage you and anybody out there who has not seen it to watch it. It's 18 minutes of time that will affect you. When I watched it, I got my why, and that is making a difference. So I repeat that. What I started out with and end with is, if I were to go tomorrow, or I knew that I had 2 weeks to live, I would be sad for my wife and my friends who would miss me, but I would be satisfied knowing that I made a difference. I know, because I've seen it, I've witnessed it, people have told me. That's what I want to be known for, making a difference. Not being the best keyboard player in the world. That's one of the things I do to connect with people, but making a difference.
Well, thank you, my friend. And I believe we're friends now, but you believe it.
We are.
And I'm so thankful that we connected, and wish you nothing but success. You and Jessica Linwoody as well, and all you do. And as you inspire many musicians across the board, young or old, thank you, and you're welcome anytime back. And I'd love to have coffee with you and just pick your brain some more. 6 minutes is not enough time to be talking with you. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. And let's do that. Let's sometime Jess is going to be gone for about a week or so, but maybe the next couple weeks I would love to have coffee. So let's make that happen. And thank you and everybody out there, tell everybody about this podcast. This man is putting a lot of time and effort into this and having some really cool guests. Matter of fact, you're having my brother-in-law soon.
Yes. We've been friends for a while. I did not know that.
Awesome. So thank you. We will do coffee soon, my friend. Thank you so much.
Take care of yourself. God bless.
All right. God bless.
Bye-bye.
This is Bold with Jessica Lynn Whitty and her husband, Raymond Hayden. I want to share that song. I believe it's such a powerful song, Bold. When you stand firm in your dreams, stand firm in your goals. And so many times in today's society you get pushed around and bullied for what you believe or don't believe. Stand bold in your dreams, stand bold in your goals in life. Stand bold. This is Chit Chat, encouraging one another.
It's a really tough bridge and divide for many veterans when they come home from active service. What we try to do is bridge that divide. My name is Brandon Marty, and I am the CEO and managing partner of Veteran Roasters Coffee. There's some great skills that can be transitioned to many different industries within coffee, and coffee's fun. We're all veterans here, veteran-owned, veteran-operated, and so there's a strong connection and trust that we all have in each other through similar service, and we support each other both personally and professionally in that growth. It's all about people here, and my goal is really to help them kind of establish a new life for them and their families, help them understand the benefits and resources available, and really create a pathway to the new phase of their lives.
I want to thank Brandon Marty for being a part of the Chit Chat Encouraging One Another podcast. And their company is offering a discount when you buy bags from them. And when you use the code ChitChat25, you'll receive 25% off. And he said they're all veterans working for the company, and they help veterans get on their feet, back on their feet, having some difficult time when they transition from the military. So just check out Veteran Roasters Coffee. It's coffee with a purpose. Next week, my guest will be Leslie Means, and she is from herviewfromhome.com. Here's a little preview of that website.
herviewfromhome.com. Simplified living in central and western Nebraska. Life is fussy. We want to help connect her to the things she loves most. Like family, faith, saving money, date nights, delicious recipes, community events, and giveaways. herviewfromhome.com, a new website connecting women in central and western Nebraska. Check it out for yourself at herviewfromhome.com.
I'm excited to have Leslie on to share about herviewfromhome.com, and I believe it truly has a feel for a lot of moms out there wearing so many hats, from raising kids to working and chauffeuring kids. You know it. I'm a father, and my wife have been married almost 29 years, and we've been there, done that. And so herviewfromhome.com with Leslie means next week on the Chit and Chat, encouraging one another podcast, where it's all about encouraging others. Thank you for joining the Chit and Chat, encouraging one another podcast today. And I had a great time talking with Raymond Hayden, a great musician. And I just love, I think the older I get, the more I love instrumental stuff. And I just really love piano, and just it's really relaxing and calming for me. And this one he's doing called Awakening is another great song. And I hope you can check him out. He's all over social media, Facebook and Instagram. It's Raymond Hayden, RaymondHayden, and he is truly a great musician. And thank you for being part of this podcast and listening and checking us out. Thank you for Veteran Roast Coffee for their great promotions and helping us get the word out and give you a great deal on coffee. And this is a fun podcast. I'm sharing encouragement, talking to people from all walks of life, and just having fun. And as I said in the beginning, I love talking to people. I love getting the story. And I believe everyone has a story. Everyone has been through something and gone through something. And it's just fun getting their story. And who's encouraged them the most, and who's inspired them as well. And so I'll keep going, keep doing this as long as I can, meeting people, talking to people. And it's just fun. It really is fun. And sometimes it gets a little chaotic and busy doing a lot of editing and interviewing. But you know what? I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to people. If I could do this full time, I'd be all over it. But I can't right now. So I'm excited about the opportunity just to meet people. And just having fun talking to people. Have a great day. Thank you for joining. Until next time. This is Chit Chat. You know the whole spiel. Let's encourage someone. See you next week.